Hello, my friends. On today's podcast, I am talking with Pete Dupuis, and we are talking about being stressed the fuck out. What do you do? What do we do when we're dealing with stress, anxiety, or overwhelm or burnout? We give you some tips that work for us and share some examples of how we deal with this in our real life. So if you're ever stressed, it's a great episode for you. Keep on listening, my friend. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm here with Pete Dupuis. What's up, Pete?
Hey, Michael, and hey to the fitness business nerds. I've never used that term like you do.
Yeah, everyone should call them nerds. You bunch of nerds.
You're
Before
all
we dive
idiots.
into you're all idiots and nerds. We love you. We love you no matter what. Before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Pete's Instagram. That if y'all aren't following Pete on Instagram, you're really missing out. He's put some amazing content on there on a regular basis, really pithy stuff that it gives you immediately actionable takeaways and insights into your business. So I just wanted to give Pete that quick shout out. And also we do kind of often repost a lot of his stuff on the Business for Unicorns Instagram. So if you're on the gram and you're not following Pete and Business for Unicorns, you're really missing some really great free content. So go check us out, friends. And speaking of Instagram, we asked recently on Instagram what all of you wanted to hear on the podcast, what topics you want us to cover. And several of you actually picked the topic we're going to talk about today, which is being a little stressed, being a little overwhelmed, be a little burnt out as a gym owner. And I can assure you, Pete and I have never been any of those things. Never experienced any stress or burnout at all. So we're just going to be making shit up today. But seriously, we have so much experience. And so I guess what we can share today is just some of our thoughts about how we cope with stress and overwhelm and burnout, and how we've seen some of our clients, some of our folks in Unicorn Society also deal with it. Let's start with you, Pete. I mean, just generally speaking, let's start with this. What are the most common signs that you're feeling stress or kind of burnout in your work?
Well, they aren't always. How do I put this? Stress isn't always just a function of burnout. Sometimes it's the opposite. I'm coming out of a stressful period, which is the opposite of burnout, which is our quiet time of year. And I said to you off the call that I felt like the ramp up coming out of our quiet season was like 7 to 10 days later than it has been in years past this year. And so I came to work this week on Monday morning in an agitated, stressed state, prepared to have a sit down with John and say, we need to scramble harder than we're scrambling right now to drum up some business. And then I opened the email account, and it was like that moment that our community collectively flicked the switch and said, oh, we're back to being interested in this, because I went from 2 evaluations in the calendar for the next 6 days to 12 in the first 90 minutes of my workday. And I canceled that meeting with John. But it doesn't change the fact that I've been stressed for a couple weeks now, because inevitably, no matter how much groundwork I lay down to stay engaged with clients during their seasons, there's always a moment where I have that I hope they come back situation going on in my head, kind of ping-ponging around, occasionally waking me up at night. And I felt like I went through a week straight of that recently. And we have come out on the other side, and I can see that, there's great cash flow sitting here. Finally starting to come back, but it took a little longer than it has recently, and that had me panicked. So I guess I'll say, for starters, I know what it feels like to be stressed, but it wasn't because I was burnt out. It was the opposite. It's like I'm itching to do something, have the gym packed and have tons of people to engage with, and they're easing back in right now, but they don't always have to be a function of us working too much as well, because a lot of the performance training gyms have a seasonal nature to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because stress is not always about overwhelm or burnout. Stress can be a little bit of just like a kind of a quieter panic, a little bit of like maybe we're too slow, maybe we're not doing enough, maybe clients won't come back. That slow burn of like, maybe the money's not going to turn out all right this season, and those are a real honest source of anxiety and stress too. So I think that's I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, I think, when I look back at like the themes for me of things that stress me out, it's, or stress me out or burn me out. They're not really interchangeable, but I'm just going to speak generally about anxiety. The times when I get the most anxiety as a gym owner I am probably more frequently on the opposite end of the spectrum, where I'm just say yes to too much. Where like I'm just, MFF, we don't have any seasonality. And even now in business for unicorns, we don't really have that much seasonality, right, to speak of. It's like just, I'm always just saying yes to too many projects and feeling like I'm pulled in too many directions. And that anxiety for me comes in, and like, I don't think I can do my best work. Like I'm so stressed out because I'm giving everything 80%, 75%, and I just don't have enough time to give 100. And that gives me this low level sense of anxiety. And I think on the other piece of it is the other time where I get anxious about work is frankly, when I'm doing the same thing for too long. Right. And I feel like I'm just on autopilot and I can't do quality work. So for me, the theme in those is like when I feel like I can't do quality work, that's the thing that drives my anxiety the most. When I feel like I'm either spread too thin or I'm just like on autopilot, like that's when I'm most stressed the fuck out. Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So knowing a little bit about what some of our triggers could be, like, what do you do about it? Just starting with you personally, like, what do you do? How do you cope when you do have any sort of stress or anxiety with work?
Well, the stress that I mentioned initially, the underwhelm version, the like underworked, a little bit of nervous
Mm-hmm.
energy type deal, tends to prompt a little bit of urgent creativity for me
Mm,
to reevaluate kind of the like get all the boats ready. We're going out. We're going to find what we can here. And it
yeah.
created a couple of unexpected wins for me in the last few weeks. So for starters, one of them, I was like, I'm not going to allow this next year. I want our Gen Pop clients to be scaled up at this time next year. And for us, that means maybe scaling up our strength camps. And so I asked myself, well, what would it look like if strength camp covered all of our rent and a portion of our overhead on the first day of the month, no matter what a calendar year from today? And then I've just started backtracking it against that number. What's my pie in the sky number
Mm,
of clients that I want to get to between now and then? And how can I reverse engineer that? And I created 7 buckets, 7 initiatives that I'm going to put in place to do it. And the first of which was to pull up all of the former client emails from pre-COVID. And I emailed all of them, every single one of them, saying, I know it's been forever since you heard from me.
yeah.
I didn't remember most of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, you probably have something you love, but if you'd like, I will offer you the second half of May for free. And we could get you back in here, see if you like the current iteration. Now, the reaction, or I should say the response rate, was probably in the vicinity of like 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they're all reading these emails because what I did when I crafted this plan, I walked up to my office manager, Kevin, and I was like, hey, I'm going to send like 100 emails in the next 10 minutes. And just so you know, a lot of them are probably dead emails. We're probably going to get some undeliverables back. And all I ask that you do is make note of who that was and then clear it from the email account. We don't need that clutter, but I want to pull them from my list. And I only got 2 undeliverable. And that
Mm,
kind of caught me by surprise. So they're getting them. And then I started beating myself up a little bit, saying, "Oh, I only got 8 or 9 emails back to those 100 emails I sent, and a couple of them were instantaneous, like, hey, I've moved out of the state. I love training there, but I'm out. Take me off your list." Okay, that's cool. I know that they're reading them quickly. Respond to them nicely. Keep that door open. Yada yada yada. We reactivated a small handful, 3 or 4, and then what happened was I was in a room with a couple of colleagues, and John said, hey, I don't know what kind of response rate you're getting to those emails, but you should know that it was a talking point in the warm-up area during multiple strength camps this morning.
mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
like, and that caught my eye because I know that you didn't send it to active clients. So they are
Yep.
talking to former clients who are mentioning they got this email. And he listed a number of them that completely ghosted me, but are apparently talking to the regulars and saying, I'm thinking of doing this thing. I got this
Yep.
email. So that got me to realize, like, sometimes we got to hammer this law of repeated exposures because people don't take action instantaneously all the time. As we were having that meeting, I got another email from someone who said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was vacationing with so-and-so this past week. And she
Yep.
mentioned she got this email from you And I'm wondering why I didn't get it, because I'd really like to come back. And so I renewed someone I didn't email because of an
Uh-huh.
initiative that, they weren't even on my list. So my takeaway here was that the kind of creative urgency that comes with feeling a little stressed, like, I want more bodies in this place, made me realize that our messaging has a lot more reach than we think, just because we're not getting responses. So I got to hammer it. I got to
Yeah.
kind of, as I said on a recent podcast, pour fuel on that fire. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, adding 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 string campers in a 5-day span is a pretty big deal for us. The lifetime value of those
Mm-hmm.
clients is significant. And so it was a win that was spawned from a stressed out ride to work. I think I was listening to a podcast where they're like, you just got to go to the archives and get some old people back in the mix. And that
Yeah.
was a move that played really well. And I'm feeling good because those are leads that I wasn't counting on. And if we really
Mm-hmm.
do our job well, which I think we're doing a nice job right now, we're holding on to a ton of business in Strength Camp. Our retention numbers are like awesome. Those people are going to make this stressful period a lot less stressful next year.
Yeah. Bravo, my friend. I mean, I think it's such a great example, right? Because when we get stressed out, most of us have, one of a few reactions, right? Like fight, flight, freeze,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes appease. And the fact that your reaction to this kind of stress was like, I got to do something. I got to fight. Let me go
Yeah.
try something. Let me go throw some shit against the wall, send some emails out, try and re-engage some people. I'm like, that's an amazing kind of reaction. It's like a productive, creative response to stress. And so I think it's a really great example of how to turn that kind of stressed out moment into like real benefit, real value. So yeah, bravo. Yeah. What I was going to say was that mine being my anxieties that I described before are mainly about just not feeling like I could do quality work. And for me, the go-to thing that it often happens, and I usually wind up doing this like once or twice a year by default, because there's usually once or twice a year where I'm stressed out about too much on my plate. And you've heard me, I don't think I've talked about it a ton on this podcast, but Mark and I are big fans of doing time audits. And we
Yeah.
have a course, Time Ninja, where we talk about doing a time audit. And for me, it's like the ability for me to hit the reset button about what's on my plate, how I'm spending my time, what's getting my energy and focus is like worth its weight in gold. And in 30 minutes, I can do a time audit for myself that helps me completely reshift what's on my plate and how I'm spending my time. So I'll just explain the 3 very simple steps that we use to do a time audit, because I think this helps anyone else feeling that kind of sense of overwhelm or spread too thinness. But it's really simple. I put a timer on my clock for 10 minutes. And for 10 minutes, I write down all the things I've been doing in an average week recently. Just literally everything, personally, professionally, from brushing my teeth to checking emails to coaching calls, whatever it is, meetings. I write it all down. That's like literally step 1. And I give myself 10, maybe 15 minutes if I have the time for the day. And then the next thing I do is next to it, I write down about how much time I think I'm spending throughout the week on those tasks. And it's usually a ballpark. It's usually probably honestly wrong. But the task of me going through and saying, okay, how much of my time is actually spent on fill in the blank, having meetings, projects, etc., really puts things into perspective for me. Because some of those numbers really jump out when I do the math about how much time I'm spending. That includes ways that I'm not spending my time well. How much time am I spending on social media? How much time am I spending sleeping in, right? Like I'll include all of that. And maybe that takes me another 10, 15 minutes, right? So I'm at maybe 20-minute mark here of this time audit. And then the last step for me is so crucial is we use like the 4 Ds, right? Which comes, I think it's from Stephen Covey. It's do, delay, delegate, delete. Do, delay, delegate, delete. I'll just go through all of those tasks. Say, okay, what do I want to keep doing? What do I want to delay and just kick down the road? Stop doing it for now. What do I want to delegate or ask for help with or hand it off to someone else? And what do I just need to not do it all anymore? What do I need to just take off my fucking list permanently? And honestly, that's like 30 minutes I'm going to take to do this exercise. And for me, it always provides like this mental reset button, this energetic reset button of like getting me refocused on what really matters and kind of cleaning house and getting rid of the shit that's just overburdening me, stressing me out, to give me time to do quality work that like I yearn to do. And like, I've been doing this time audit for, I don't know, years now on a regular basis. And that stuff still piles up. right? It's like one of those closets in your house. It's like no matter how often you try and clean it out, or that drawer in your kitchen, it's like it's always going to accumulate new shit. You just need a good process for getting rid of stuff once in a while. And so for me, this process of dealing with my most common kind of stress is this time audit, which again takes me 30 minutes. It's like such a low cost of my time to get so much clarity back. Right. So I don't know if that's helpful to listeners. I don't think I've described those steps before on the podcast. So maybe that's new information, but
Oh, it's helpful. You
yeah,
you taught me that exact lesson in January of 2020. You know, certain things you remember the timetable so clearly because
yeah,
of these like anchors in life. But the last time I left town per se in 2020 pre-COVID was to attend Time Ninja in
yeah,
Manhattan.
that's right.
And so I drove down to you guys, and I remember you giving that lecture. And I've done
Hmm.
a time audit twice a year since, and it's a game
Yeah,
changer. And you taught it in
yeah,
that exact way. I remember it like it was yesterday. This was a different world we lived in at the time. I'll say
yeah,
one thing that was kind of prompted in my memory as you were talking is that you mentioned that once or twice a year you get to this point of stress, burnout, or overwhelm. And
yeah.
I'll reinforce that and say it's true because I find that one thing that you and Mark do really well is read each other and then kind of rally the troops. So I say this
Hmm.
because I think this week or so marks the 2 year mark of me working with Unicorn Society as a coach. And in the last two
Mm.
years, on at least one occasion for each of you, um, you or Mark have said, "Hey, just a heads up, Keeler has too much on his plate right now, and he is in the weeds. Keep that in mind as you
Yeah,
work with him." Or you've said the same thing about
yeah,
Mark. Mark's
yeah,
as it relates to having his kid. Mark's in the weeds, and Mark's
yeah.
saying yes to way too much, and I know he can't get done what he's saying he can get done. And you look out for each
Yeah.
other, whether you're asking for that help or not. I can see you doing it. So you need to lean on your business partner when you feel in the weeds. I think you guys read each other in a
Hmm.
way that you don't need to ask for the help. One sees it, and there's this kind of this policy like, I'm just going to give you the feedback whether you want it or not. But a lot of us kind of bottle it up
Yeah,
and just hope that we don't project
yeah.
our stress onto our peers. But having that business
Hmm.
partner communicating to the people around you, like, hey, Pete's way way over his head with his workload right now. Let's just let
Yeah.
him keep his door closed and catch up, and I'll
It's
help out. I'll pick
it's
up that
such an yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah, it's such an important point, and I'm so glad you said it, and I appreciate you reflecting that back to me because I don't think about it that often. We just have been doing it like that for so long, but I think so often gym owners and leaders of all kind they have this false narrative in their head that they have to be so stoic, right? That they can't give any impression that they're overwhelmed or dropping balls or stressed out, and like nothing's farther from the truth. Like your team will only appreciate you more if you can be authentic and real with them. Be like, listen, actually, I need to pause this initiative for a few weeks because I just feel like I'm not doing a good job with it. Right? They will respect you more when you can be a real human who has flaws and gets overwhelmed from time to time. And so, like, I think the more to the point you made, the more you can share when you're feeling this way, when you share when you're overwhelmed with other people. Whether you might not have to be your whole team, but if you have a business partner, that's great, a spouse, at least one person on your team you can talk to. And if you don't feel comfortable with any of that, great, get a coach, get a therapist, join a support group of some kind. I think talking it out, I think, is a proven strategy over millennia for dealing with stress and anxiety. And so finding someone to talk it out with is always going to be helpful.
Sure,
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's leave it there. I know we could say so much more about this topic, but I think we've shared all kinds of ideas I think our listeners can take away and go use right away. So, listeners, I hope you found this helpful. We hopefully we've normalized the fact that we all get stressed out from time to time. We even get burnt out from time to time. And so hopefully some of the ideas we shared today will be valuable. So if you like this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review everywhere you listen, and email us or connect with us on Instagram and let us know what you want us to talk about next. My email is michael@businessofunicorns.com. Pete is pete@businessofunicorns.com. And thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day, Pete. Talk soon.
Likewise, take care.